Drunk theater creep.
Tentatively posting this here as I'm fairly certain it belongs, though nobody was directly threatened by this man initially. This happened in March of 2014. I had just turned 18 and had been working at my local movie theater for about 5 or 6 months. It wasn't a busy day by any means, and I was on register in the snack bar when this seemingly typical man approached with his popcorn, hot dog, pickle, and drink. The only thing I noticed immediately as strange was the fact that he was wearing sunglasses still, but even that didn't really set off any alarm bells. I rang him up, and as I did so, he asked me if I was Hispanic. I was caught off guard by this question. As a red-haired, green-eyed white girl, I laughed a little bit and told him no, I wasn't Hispanic. He went on to tell me how I could pass for a Hispanic girl, his slur becoming evident. It wasn't until he started to lean over the counter that I became uncomfortable. He told me I had pretty eyes, and I thanked him as he paid, trying to get through the transaction as quickly as possible. Instead of heading to his movie, he took his food to the little island to my left, where we kept all of our condiments, napkins, and straws. This was pretty normal, as most patrons did stop by here to at least grab a straw and whatever else they needed before their movie started. This man, however, immediately opened and began eating his hot dog and casually munching on his popcorn. Something about him gave me a very bad feeling, so I kept my eye on him for a ridiculous 2 hours before saying anything. I still regret waiting so long, but this was a slow weekday and we only had a single podium set up at the front, with poles set up that funneled to it from the entrances, so nobody was allowed into the lobby without a movie ticket. I watched him wander around the lobby, returning to the island periodically to eat his popcorn, and even had a couple of other guests ask me about him. I'd finally had enough of him when I saw him approach my best friend, who was on podium at the time. I'm fiercely protective of this girl and have confronted men multiple times for being inappropriate with her. This man, however, scared me bad enough that I worried about confronting him directly. I went and found a manager and brought them up to speed on the situation. They approached him and then disappeared into the office, returning with the MOD, manager on duty, of the day. I was too far away to hear any of the interaction from my register, but eventually our off-duty police officer, who was our theater's security, had to get involved, and they even had to call 2 more officers who were on duty because the man refused to leave and had become violent. Anyway, they arrested the man, and apparently they found 4 daggers as well as a throwing star in his pockets. When asked why he was carrying so many weapons, his response was, "Because I can't carry a gun." He was also very drunk. I'm not sure what became of him, but aside from the time a man threatened to skin me alive, it was the scariest thing I've ever dealt with at work. In hindsight, I should have reported him much sooner, but I did see his movie tickets, which were for 3 separate movies, come to find out. And I'm a suspicious person in general, so I chalked it up to paranoia until he started messing with my friend. She said he legitimately scared the hell out of her, though I can't really remember what he had said to her. It was a learning experience. to say the least.
Dog sitting and a gross abuse of free Wi-Fi.
It's been long enough that I am ready to tell this story. Last year, I was dog sitting for my aunt. The dog is small, sweet, and a little skittish. I had work most of the week, so I was just living in the house for the time being. It's a nice house, not big enough to feel empty if you're alone, but not small enough to feel cramped. The only rooms I used were the kitchen, bathroom, living room, and the guest bedroom. My last day of work this particular week was a double shift. I was excited because after this I had 2 days off. I planned on using them to introduce the dog to RuPaul's Drag Race. I usually try to keep good spirits for a double shift because regardless of the time and annoying customers, extra money is always needed. My old job was a barista and cashier. Mornings are always busy and nights are slow. On weekends, people are more concerned with coffee and breakfast than anything else we may have to offer. I was having a nice time, actually, because this day was turning out not to be as hectic as the previous ones that week, one even involving a small fire. As the morning rush line was dwindling, the limited tables in the restaurant came into view, and I started people watching. As I slowly scanned the customers eating bagels and reading the paper, my eyes met a man at a laptop. He had long, dirty hair and a bit of stubble. He stared at me with a little too much intensity. I wondered if he found my people watching rude, so I decided to clean a bit and restock instead. It didn't take long for a line to reform, so I returned to my register. Once again, after the line died down, I could see the few tables in the front. The man was still there and he was still staring at me. Every now and then he would look at his computer and then back to me. It almost felt like he was looking right through me, or like he could see every part of me. It felt so uncomfortable that I went and cleaned in the back of the restaurant, out of his sight. After the next rush, I took my break and sat far away from the man. He was out of my sight and I was out of his. When I came back from my break, the man was gone. My manager asked if I had interacted with him at all. I told her about him making eye contact with me, but that nothing else really happened. She told me that the man had been watching porn on his laptop and she had asked him to leave. So that was weird enough. This man had been watching porn and staring at me. I really wish that this is where the story stopped. Hours passed and the rest of the day was entirely normal, despite me and a few female coworkers feeling a slight edge. We were in the process of closing, which is actually a process I really enjoy. I'm one of those weirdos that likes to clean. We're well in, and I'm almost done with my assigned jobs when my manager comes up to me again. She informs me that the man had found his way back in the restaurant at some point, and she found him hiding in a back corner. She chased him out by threatening to call the police. She knew that earlier in the day, he seemed to be paying attention to me. She said I could finish up whatever I wanted or needed to, but afterwards she strongly advised me to get home as soon as possible. She also offered to walk me to my car. I took both offers and quickly got my things together and clocked out. My aunt's house was not far from work. It was a 5-minute drive at most, which was helpful because then I didn't feel crippling anxiety for much longer. I got in the house and after triple checking that I had locked every door, got into my pajamas, but unsurprisingly, I was not ready to sleep yet. Now was the time to introduce the dog to RuPaul's Drag Race. I went into the living room. The living room consists of a couch, 2 chairs, a TV, a window, and the front door. Ultimately, the porch light was broken and the window had no curtains. That had me a little stressed, but I was willing to take that over the only other TV in the house, which was the one that exists in the scary basement. Facing the basement TV included having my back to a sliding glass door facing the very dark woods. No thanks. I was setting up the TV when the dog started growling. I didn't really think much of it. As I said, the dog is skittish, so he growls and barks all the time. I wasn't looking at him. I was muttering shush shush and figuring out how to work the TV. The dog didn't stop and started to get louder, so I finally put down the remote and turned to face the dog. I froze. The dog was barking at the window, and there was an outline of a man at the window, the exact same build as the one from the restaurant. I screamed, and luckily that was enough for the man to run away from the window. I stood there frozen for a while. The dog had calmed down, but I hardly felt safe, so I went to the kitchen, grabbed a big knife, and did what any responsible adult would do. Called my mommy. She did not advise calling the police. My mom never does, and instead came over and spent the night with me. I told my aunt. I spent the rest of my time dog sitting, clutching the knife anytime I slept or took a shower. My aunt also gave me permission to have one friend stay with me every night. Nothing else ever happened. I never even saw the guy come into work again. A part of me wishes I knew who he was or where he went or what he even wanted with me. I'm glad that he was a coward and that all it took to scare him off was my scream and an extra small dog. Let's not meet again, stalker porn guy. Who watches porn in a sandwich shop anyway?
The closing shift creep.
This begins in 2011. I had just turned 24, and with my cosmetology license, I began working at a hair salon down the street from my apartment. I lived in a very wealthy suburban neighborhood on the water. I called it the sleepy beach town. Most nights I worked the front desk, closing with my coworker, Becky. Becky was a shy and reserved younger girl who would easily get embarrassed talking to customers. I, on the other hand, was very extroverted and took pleasure talking with anyone and everyone. The salon was divided 3 ways. There was a room to the left where the stylist cut and colored hair. The receptionist's desk was on the right when you first walked in, and behind it, there was a wall between the desk and the back room, reserved for guest waiting, spa treatments, and shampooing. I had to approach from the side to get behind my desk. It started off as a typical night at the salon. There were 2 stylists finishing up a couple clients in the stylist room, while I was busy training Becky on how to close out the cash register. The clock just turned 6:30 and it was already dark out when a man walked in. He was tall and a true silver fox with a full head of hair. He wore a black North Face fleece, and he looked like your typical Pacific Northwest local. He asked me if he could take a seat and wait. This is not a weird request in the salon since many women's husbands come in to pick them up and wait until their wife's appointment is finished. I assumed this man was doing the same. 20 minutes passed, and then he walked right up next to Becky and I behind the counter. He looked down at me and says, I've been waiting, but no one has showed up. I politely asked who he was waiting for, and he replied, "You know," winks. "No, sir, I do not. How can I help you?" "Are both of you over 18? "Excuse me?" "I have good money and I have been patiently waiting. Now I'm getting irritated. I want my massage and I want it now." Fear had crept over me since he started standing there, especially because he had his hand in his pocket and because he was hovering over me in an area with no escape. And then I noticed the handle of a knife sticking out of his fleece and the wristband of a medical patient ID. I signaled to Becky to call 911, but she had completely froze. I told the man he needed to come to the front of the counter if he wanted me to begin his appointment. He slowly sauntered to the front of the counter, then he leans in and softly says to me, "I like that dark shade of lipstick you're wearing. Will you be wearing it for me?" That was when I grabbed the phone and made it very apparent I was calling 911. I quickly began giving a full description of him, including the wristband I had noticed. He turned around and left out of the front. I had this weird feeling that he wasn't done yet, so I locked the entry door. A few moments later, he came running up, stopped, and stared into my eyes. His eyes looked empty and careless with rage as he began punching the front door. He slowly turned and quietly started walking away. While this was going on, I told everyone to remain calm and said that it was being handled. Thankfully, the cops showed up and immediately detained him. The officer had explained to me that the man had escaped the psychiatric hospital a few towns over and was looking for a happy ending massage parlor. During our weekly team meeting, the owner of the salon told me that what I did was not protocol and that if it were to happen again, to get an adult to help. I left that salon shortly after and am very happy with my career change into real estate. So far. Creepy man escaping the psychiatric hospital for a quickie? Let's not meet again.